Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech, and today we're going to be talking about Mono White Hero in Pioneer. Definitely one of the coolest deck lists I've ever featured on the channel before. As always, before we hop into the video, let me know in the comment section below, once we get to the end of the video, what do you think about the deck? Is there any cards that you would include? Just let me know if there's a card that I definitely should have included that was really, really cool, but I didn't. This is definitely a very unique deck. I've never seen anybody do something like this for Pioneer, so just let me know in the comment section below what you think about the deck. So, all right, Mono White Hero. So, kind of a shout out to Saffron Olive. A few years ago, he made a very, very cool list with this in Modern, which this list is pretty similar overall for the most part, except there's not cards like Wiltleaf Liege or like Wiltleaf Cavaliers or that kind of thing. Really any of the Lieges for the most part. None of those are in Pioneer. So we kind of had to make do with the hybrid cards that also make white. So obviously the signature card, for those who don't know, is Hero of Precinct 1. 2/2 for 2. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token. So obviously the gimmick is that we need to play multicolor spells. But what's great is there's so many cards that you can use like red or white mana or red or green mana. Essentially, we can make a mono white deck, but still get all the triggers from Hero of Precinct 1, which is very, very cool. Sorry. So all these hybrid cards, what cards can we even play in the deck? So we have two sweet 1-drops. We're playing 4 Dryad Militant and 4 Judge's Familiar, which are honestly 2 of my favorite cards in the entire game. Fantastic 1-drops. Dryad Militant, basically a Savannah Lions with upside. So if we're playing against like Is It Phoenix, for instance, it exiles all their instants and sorceries, which is pretty sweet. So I'm definitely a big fan of Dryad Militant. Judge's Familiar also pretty good as well. Honestly, being able to target counter an instant or sorcery can be pretty relevant a lot of the time. If our opponent, like, they're playing a board wipe, but it's not like Supreme Verdict, for instance, they're not able to tap out to be able to play it. So Judge's Familiar can honestly be really annoying for a number of different decks. You know, if we go turn 1 Judge's Familiar, we can counter like maybe a Thoughtseize or something like that. It's just a really, really good card. So definitely a big fan of Judge's Familiar. We are also playing 4 Boros Reckoner, another one of my favorite cards, probably my favorite Boros card in the entire game. Boros Reckoner, a lot of people know what it does, but for those who don't, 3/3 for red-white, red-white, red-white hybrid. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target creature or player, or in this case, any target now. And then for a red or white, we can give it first strike until end of turn. Also, spoiler alert, we're not really playing any regular 2-drops other than Hero Precinct 1, because there really wasn't any good white hybrid cards to be able to play in the deck. There is a couple though, and we'll kind of get to that in just a second. So all right, the rest of our main creatures here, we're playing 2 Zerta the Dawnwaker. And yes, I know it's a companion. We're not using it as a companion, but we can still play it in the deck though. And I'm not gonna lie to you, there's not a lot of use that we can really get out of Zerta, because it says abilities you activate that aren't mana abilities cost 2 less to activate. So, which there's really not a lot of ways that we can take advantage of this, but there is a card, which we'll talk about that later in the video, but we can also tap 1 and tap it, and target creature can't block this turn. So it does has some relevance. I actually was playing this in a very cool Gruul Zerta list a while ago that was featured on the channel here, and I tell you what, that ability was very relevant. Assuming our opponent only had like 1, 2, maybe 3 creatures to block with, being able to take out their best one out of combat is extremely powerful. So definitely a big fan of Zerta. We're also playing 4 Occam Ranger. This card, I drafted this in Throne of Eldraine a couple years ago, and I really never played it since until this deck. So for white hybrid sorcery, we can make 2 1/1 white human creature tokens. So not the most powerful effect, but the flip side of it, it's a 2/2 for white, and then we can tap it and give our creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. So, I mean, it does the thing for sure. It's kind of like an Anthem, but again, it triggers our Hero Precinct 1, gets us a 1/1, and then from all those 1/1s that we make from Hero, we can give them all +1/+1 and just take out our opponent. So, Occam Ranger, definitely a very cool card to be playing in the list. Then we're also playing 4 Blade Historian, 2/3 for essentially white human cleric. Attacking creatures you control have double strike, so it's kind of like another Anthem in a way. So, you know, it's good. Our 4 drops are pretty much Anthems, which is pretty sweet. Blade Historian is definitely a very cool card. It saw a lot of play in the Winota decks when those, when Winota was still legal. This card is definitely very powerful, and I think it does have a place in Pioneer, and I'm very happy that I'm actually able to feature this very sweet Boros card. So, all right, next slide here. this is pretty much all the white cards in the deck, the ones that don't trigger from the Hero of Precinct 1. But guess what? We're also a mono white deck, so obviously we're going to be playing some of the more powerful mono white spells. So obviously we're playing 4 Brave the Elements. All of our creatures are white, even though they are other colors in addition to that. But guess what? It does the same thing it does in mono white humans. It's a protection spell. If there's a huge board state where, it's just clogged up with creatures, we can just name a color, get protection from them, and just kill them, which is just fantastic. Ossification's also great as well. We're playing a ton of planes, and this is definitely the best removal spell for, if we're playing a bunch of planes, because we can exile a creature or planeswalker opponent controls until it leaves play, which is pretty sweet. Then we're also playing 4 In the Trenches. So, a little bit of backstory. I wanted an Anthem in this deck, and there's a decent amount of Anthems in the format, but unfortunately, none of the ones that are 2 mana work with our deck. For instance, like Rally the Ranks is only for a specific creature type, and we're playing a ton of different creature types, so that didn't work. So I had to look at the 3 mana ones to see what would work, and ultimately I decided to play In the Trenches because I think that was the best one. And remember Zerta earlier having relevancy? This is where that card is relevant. So for 5 and a white, we can exile a non-land permanent until In the Trenches leaves the battlefield. But what's sweet is Zerta can help that cost 2 less, because 6 is pretty steep, but 4 is a lot more manageable. So In the Trenches, I'm definitely a big fan of it. And hey, every so often we can O-ring something, which is pretty sweet. So definitely a big fan of the card in general. So that's our entire main board except for our lands here, which our lands are really simple. We're playing 2 Cave of the Frost Dragon. Obviously it's a man land. We're going to be playing it. I'm also not playing Mutavault, spoiler alert, in the list because all of our cards, most of them cost white, and if we have a Mutavault, we can't even cast those cards on curve, so it's very important that all of our lands make white mana. We're also playing 1 Aganjo. It's free. Why wouldn't we play it, obviously? It's actually the most expensive card in the deck at $7, so if you don't have an Aganjo, not a big deal, but if you do have one laying around, I highly suggest putting it in the deck. And then rounding out our lands, we're playing 4 Sheffitt Dunes, one of my favorite, like regular lands to be playing. I'm a big fan of the entire desert cycle, especially since they're really cheap and they're just really powerful. 2 white, tap, sacrifice a desert, give our creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. Just a fantastic mana sink. And then we're also playing 15 basic planes, which obviously we're playing Ossification, so we want to make sure that we have a lot of white lands and specifically planes to attach it onto, because it does have to be a basic land that we control. And then as our spicy basic land of the day, since we're playing a ton of cards from Ravnica, I decided to feature the very awesome John Avon Plains from Return to Ravnica. It's just a really, really sweet art. Definitely reminds me of the Selesnya Conclave. I believe that's Selesnya, at least, that's being featured on there, but I'm also not the huge lore nerd for sure. So, all right, that's our entire main board. We still got to talk about sideboard as well as some budget options here. So sideboarding is really, really simple. We're going to want some Graveyard Hate. Rest in Peace is the best option that we can play. Obviously, it's just the cleanest answer for pretty much everything Graveyard Hate related. We want to be playing 3 to 4 copies of that. We're also going to want some extra removal in interaction. Personally, I would recommend some extra removal like Portable Hole. You can also play Get Lost or Fateful Absence. I think those are definitely the best options that you should be playing. Then we're also going to want cards like Damping Sphere and Deafening Silence. They're very, very good prison pieces for if we're playing against, the new updated Mono Green Devotion list, as well as Lotus Combo. It's very, very important that we shut those decks down because they are everywhere in the local metagame. And as well, the disclaimer I always say is if your not your sideboard, if your metagame's a little different, feel free to go ahead and change up the sideboard, but what I'm playing in my sideboard is in the description below if you'd like to check it out for yourself. And the last thing we got to talk about is the budget options, and I'm not going to lie to you, there's really not a lot of budget options in this deck because the entire deck is only $55 as we built it today. So it's technically a $50 deck, but I didn't include it as a $50 deck just because, this is like the fully capable deck, but you can easily get it under $50 if you just cut the Aganjo because it's $7. So you'd be sitting at $48 for the entire deck, which is pretty sweet. And I actually have the entire deck with me. I recently purchased it on Star City Games, so I'll probably be playing it at some point here in the near future on our FNM videos that we feature on the channel here. So that's our entire deck tech overall. And again, not a lot of budget options. I just wanted to make that clear because this deck is very, very cheap to build. So let me know in the comment section below if you end up building this deck. And again, if there's any cards that I didn't include in the deck, just let me know in the comment section below. So I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.